Good evening.
Improvement already. Look at the social.
We're going to go ahead and get started this evening. Welcome to our CannaCurious event hosted by AMA Southern Connecticut. My name is Richard Connor, and I have the privilege of serving as president this chapter year. This is our chapter's first hybrid event, so while I'm welcoming all of you here in Westport, I'm also welcoming all of those who are joining in on the live stream. Thank you for being here tonight. AMA offers a number of educational events as well as networking events like this one. Educational and networking events like this one. And we host them throughout the year. So I also want to talk about the one we'll have coming up in June. It is a marketing mixer at the lovely Barcelona Waypoint in Norwalk on June 23rd next month. So on to tonight's program. If you're curious about cannabis and the business of cannabis, you've come to the right place. So I'd like to first talk about our generous sponsors. Special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Matteo Communications, that produced the video that we're about to see in a moment. And thanks to our year-round sponsors, Media Associates, Sacred Heart University, Austin Lawrence Group, and Alpha Graphics. Finally, thanks to our event co-chairs here, Dan Liu and Tammy Ward. Also, thanks to our talented moderator, Erica Alonso, from self-care tech company Kazu by Witty, and the rest of the AMA team, including Factory Underground, handling our tech. So we think you'll find CannaCurious program enlightening and a booming sector that is ever-changing. So hope you enjoy the event tonight. So what we'll do now is kick off with a short video.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
We are all joining together to release draft legislation to end the federal prohibition on cannabis.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
Joe, get out, man.
Say yes to your life. And when it comes to drugs and alcohol, just say no.
You are illegally stealing medical records right now in the court of public opinion. You are breaking the law.
Good evening. My name is Dan Liu, and yes, I did sign up for all of the product testing. Tonight, our chapter is bringing you a 360-degree view of the cannabis industry from different pioneers, experts, and thought leaders, and you will hear from them in just a few minutes. As a booming and constantly evolving industry, the cannabis ecosystem is wide-ranging with business and career opportunities throughout the sector. Our time together is short, so tonight's program will focus on marketing, regulatory, and social equity, where they intersect and how they diverge. So let's get started, and Tammy, take it away.
Tonight's moderator, Erica Alonso, is a game-changing marketer and entrepreneur. She's sharply insightful, strategic, and operates with a never-ending creative flow. She's a hurricane. Erica's career spans the leading edge of technology, from Apple and AOL, Time Warner, to a Fortune 500 and various startups. Today, she brings that talent to the cannabis sector as co-founder and CMO of Kazoo by Witty, which is an acronym for Wellness Insights Technology. So what I'm going to share next is a global first in cannabis. Witty is launching a device soon that's groundbreaking for cannabis consumers and brands, either for medical or recreational usage. The device is called Kazoo, and it delivers a precise dose to the user, which is huge in this industry. Measuring dose is really important. Another first, it's multimodal, which means whatever mode you're going to use it in, whether it's vapor, tincture, or water-soluble drops, it's going to be good for you. And for the brands that fill the pods and the cartridges, you'll get real-time insights directly from the device to your desktop. It's that interactive. Again, huge news, and innovations like this in this industry come fast and furious, so I'm not going to delay another minute. Thank you, Kazoo by Witty, for lending us Erica's brilliance. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Erica Alonso.
I'm a hugger.
Where are we? So, I mean, first, let's be real. You're not all here because you're focused professionally on a potential career move to cannabis. It's personal, too. So I've taken my best swing at a debrief I wish I had received when I entered the space 5 years ago, to tell you what we know and what we don't know about the plant and the people consuming it, both professionally and personally. The amazing women on my left will take us on a deeper dive. I'm just going to give you the basics. Overwhelmed and curious by cannabis? You're not alone. This booming industry is in its infancy. We're all asking questions and learning more every day. So why are we here? Most of us believe that natural remedies are safer alternative to prescription medicines. But as consumers, we just feel we don't know enough. The market has outpaced the data and science behind it. So let's start at the very top. Hemp, CBD, cannabis. The differences are in the legalese. Cannabis is federally illegal, a Schedule I narcotic, alongside heroin and LSD. According to the FDA, Schedule I means it has no medical value and a high potential for abuse. Schedules 2 through 5 have some medical value, but differ in ranking depending on their potential for abuse. So cocaine and opioids are safer than cannabis, according to the FDA today. Yeah, right? However, cannabis is highly regulated at a state level. And yet only 46% of non-consumers think legal is safer than illicit. It is safer than illicit because state regulated means everything is monitored within each state from seed to sale. The seed is planted, grown, harvested, lab tested, formulated, lab tested again, distributed, sold, and smoked, all in the same state. You can't cross lines with it, unless it classifies as hemp. If the plant is grown to contain less than 0.3% of THC, which is the psychoactive compound found in both plants, then it's called hemp. The 2018 Farm Bill passed, making hemp federally legal, which means that you can buy hemp-derived CBD online and anywhere you want. However, the FDA has yet to regulate it, which means consumer beware. Buy from reliable sources. You don't know if that label's accurate, where it came from, whether it was tested for pesticides or so on. In fact, 25% of CBD products out there are not tested for purity. Hemp and cannabis, they are the same plant made up of over 500 active compounds, primarily classified as cannabinoids and terpenes. Cannabinoids are naturally occurring compounds found in cannabis. THC are like the big headliners, but there are over 150 lesser-known compounds called minor cannabinoids. Terpenes are a family of organic compounds. Myrcene is found in black pepper, limonene in citrus fruits, both as well as another 80 plus are also found in cannabis. Terpenes are responsible for scent and flavor. When they all mix together, it's kind of like the Long Island iced tea of smells. That's where that unique cannabis aroma comes from. They are aromatic molecules secreted inside the tiny resin glands of cannabis flowers. But there's more to terpenes than their scent. For example, linalool is a terpene found in cannabis, but it's also found in lavender, known for its calming, relaxing effects. And when the two combine, it's referred to as the entourage effect, a combination responsible for the many therapeutic benefits of cannabis. While 98% of the plant is THC and CBD, that remaining 2% of terpenes and minor cannabinoids are small but not insignificant. Think of it like an apple. 86% water, 52 calories, 13 grams of carbs, this is in a medium size, 2.4 grams of fiber, and then those minute amounts of micronutrients like vitamin C and potassium and other plant compounds that provide the anti-inflammatory, antiviral, and antioxidant effects. Note that I have yet to mention indica, sativa, or one of 14,000 strains like OG Kush, Granddaddy Purple, or Blue Dream. Cannabinoid content and terpene-driven benefits are the way of the future. I know it's a lot to read on this slide, but it gives you a sense of the medical potential of these minor cannabinoids. Beyond CBD, which we saw in the video, now being used in a drug called Epidiolex for epilepsy in children, CBG is being studied for Crohn's disease and glaucoma, CBN for ALS, and I've personally used it for sleep. THCV for Alzheimer's, PTSD, and my favorite new find, appetite suppressant. While we haven't amassed the data required to make claims, New Frontier recently published that 93% of medical consumers reported that cannabis improved their medical condition, and the research and science is advancing daily. So here's what we do know, what science has already proven. It all comes back to you and your body's natural receptors to cannabis. The endocannabinoid system was discovered in the 90s. It helps us achieve homeostasis, keeps things normal and regulated. There are two main cannabinoid receptors, CB1 receptors found in the central nervous system and CB2, which are in the immune system. Different cannabinoids like THC, CBD, CBG map to different receptors, which explains why cannabis has so many different uses. Is this making sense? And how you consume also plays a big role in how we respond. Whether you burn flower or vaporize extracted concentrates, inhalation has a faster onset and a shorter duration. Ingestion, think gummies, brownies, tablets, tinctures, are absorbed completely differently. Typically takes longer for onset and stays in your body longer. And think about it, some of those very volatile terpenes and cannabinoids act differently when they're digested through your stomach. Topicals, like salves, roll-ons, patches, have also a longer onset due to the absorption in your skin, and it's more localized to that area of your body. And for the most part, they're non-psychoactive. Innovations are ever-changing, and 51% of current consumers say that they're eager to try new products. And those new innovations are flying off the shelves. The legal market is booming, with sales that hit over $26.5 billion in 2021 and forecasted to hit over $32 billion this year. There are now 19 adult use states, woohoo, 39 medical use states. This represents 3/4, that's 74% of our country now has access to legal cannabis in some form. And when you compare those numbers to other consumer markets, it's really eye-opening. Current legal sales of cannabis have surpassed over-the-counter pain medication. And consumer spending continues to rise. The average shopper spends $120 in medical and $76 in adult use dispensaries per trip. To give you a comparative, average alcohol basket size is $25. So, aside from product innovation and expanding shopping carts, what's driving the growth? Here's a view of revenues and projected estimates for the legal and illicit cannabis market. The bottom screen section represents legal. As you can see, it's on the rise, $2 billion from 2014, up to an anticipated $57 billion by 2030. Now look at the top. That yellow line, it represents illicit sales, which keeps humming along, regardless of legal, from $53 million in 2014 to $64 billion in 2020. There's no X here where they cross paths. It is not the shift of buying from illicit to legal market that's driving the growth, if that's what you thought it was. I know I did. You are. As nascent states mature and stigma dissipates, we know it's the new consumers driving the growth. 27% of Americans that have never consumed cannabis are open to trying. Given today's population, I did the math, that represents more than 72 million people that are CannaCurious. So let's talk about the consumer. Historically, the industry forced us to think about consumers in one of two buckets, medical and adult use, driven by state regulations. But we know that's no longer the case, because as spending and frequency increases, so does diversification of format and expanding use cases. That same person with a debilitating medical condition doesn't only need pain relief, she wants to feel uplifted or go out and be social. With 67% more consuming more than once per week, and 81% saying cannabis has had a positive impact in their life, there's a huge amount of consumer exploration going on. So you could be thinking many things right now. Whether you leave here tonight and change your LinkedIn to a career in cannabis, or determined to book an Airbnb to Massachusetts this weekend. Or maybe you decide, this is not for me. I leave you with this: market them. Cannabis consumers should be added to your mix, unlike the soccer mom, who I'm certain doesn't like that label. To these people, nearly 40%, cannabis is part of their identity. Cannabis and CBD consumers are one of the most progressive audiences, a combined 65 million market movers with a real passion for brands, open to trying new things, sharing discoveries, and most of all, living the best life possible. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to bring Amy up on stage to give you a little bit more form to that. That was the top line. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica, and such a pleasure to be here in a room full of marketers. As somebody who's been in the cannabis space for the last 10 years at this point, most of my job is talking about cannabis, and then we get to marketing and the best practices. So to start with, we're CannaCurious, we're marketers. Let's get going, so let's get into it. Nice to meet you. I am the co-founder of Pheno. Pheno is an advertising agency that is specifically focused for cannabinoid brands, businesses, and revolutions because we still need to legalize this plant, but also because we connect with the cannabis consumer. More and more I'm hearing from brand advertisers who want to connect with that audience, exactly as Erica lined out, because they are progressive, they're open, they're curious. If they are interested in a natural solution for one thing, they may be interested in another. And so from that, have built a practice for cannabis marketing that I'm excited to talk to you about. I'm also the co-founder of the Cannabis Media Council. And the Cannabis Media Council was formed in order to create positive pro-cannabis category-level campaigns to drive category consideration at the consumer level. There's been wonderful advocacy work done to reach policymakers, to change hearts and minds there, to change laws, which we certainly need. But we also need consumers talking to one another. That is really the heart of the cannabis movement at this point, is how do consumers talk to one another in order to alleviate those nervousness, concerns, and find out what they want to try and how it helps them. Previous roles, I was at Curaleaf. I was responsible for building the New York market and went from opening dispensaries in New York to dominant market share through our wholesaling partners, and have since gone on to work with other edge industries, including the Crypto Cannabis Club. I included this photo because it happened this month at the United Nations. And so if we think that we're having whispered conversations about cannabis, that is absolutely not true. We are having a cannabis conversation on a global level on how do we connect into the Sustainable Development Goals and drive forward the triple bottom line of success for people, for profits, and for our planet. And so you are here today in Connecticut, but you are part of a global conversation of how we drive these industries forward. And so what we do need in cannabis marketing are trailblazers. It is challenging. Nobody is going to lie in this forum and say that the things that you think you're going to bring and the tools and the resources and the partners that you think you're going to bring from your traditional marketing practice into cannabis, I assure you it is not turnkey. I assure you that it's going to be fragmented and very, very difficult. But this plant is worth it. And so not to belabor it, but just to be very clear about the fact that we're still dealing with controlled substance. We're dealing with lack of research because of that status. That means we also don't have banking. It is also a lack of industry standardization because we're going state by state. There's misinformation. There is a legacy of racist policies that have stigmatized people, primarily of Black and brown communities, devastating them on this war on drug. They're stigmatized consumers. It's highly censored. And oh yeah, you can't write anything off. So it's very, very challenging. But to focus on the marketers and what we need to heed on the other side of that is doable. And the way that you do that is by coming to these networking events, by connecting. I mean, we came up from the city from MJ Unpacked, and we had a 2.5-hour car ride of combining skill sets, knowledge, what we've learned to make it happen. And this is what we need to do in order to get ahead and heed these similar scenarios. Primarily, though, I want to talk to you about advertising. The most underserved channel in the marketing mix is advertising. And I want, if there's one takeaway that you leave with tonight as marketers, is you can advertise. The question on why do you advertise? Advertising and PR, and I'm so excited to get into the specifics with this panel, are the two things you can do at scale. And so you're going to recognize the why you advertise to motivate moving people from being strangers, not knowing that they don't know you, to being your loyal consumers. And along the way, you have different offers, you have different KPIs, and you have different connective points with those audiences. However, the considerations for cannabis are something to have a pause for, is that when you go to market with your cannabis products, you're going to be looking at your ingredients, so what cannabinoids are included. You're also going to be looking at how this plant was sourced, is another one that's going to be a consideration for how you market. And then you're going to be looking at the form factor, which is it inhalation? Is it edible? Is it topical? And all of your marketing partners are going to have different standards for those products. You're also going to look at market location. Are you in an adult use state, or are you in a medical state, or are you merging? And then what kind of messages can you send into those markets? Age appeal. We certainly have pediatric patients, but we want to look to make sure that we're talking to the right audience, which in an adult use state is looking at 21 plus. We also are looking at creative content. Every publisher has their own standard, their own guideline that you're going to need to connect into and make it happen. Does your website actually sell products, or is it an educational site, is another consideration when you're marketing this space. And then also, because we're talking about marketing and advertising, it's your spend level. You want to make sure you get to a place where you're not whispering into the wind. But you can advertise cannabis. And so not to zoom in too much on the bottom part here, but anywhere that you can compliantly put an advertising message for cannabis, my agency can get you there. So that includes audio, that includes billboard, that includes programmatic media, that includes all the places that other mainstream advertisers are. You can also, in some variety, get there with paid media. One fantastic scenario in looking at the Facebook categorical ban on these products to think about for you, if you're out there considering launching a brand, is to actually do a lead generation campaign before you launch, before there are any mentions of products on your site. And so, for example, one incredible company that we worked with, All Better Co., is a mom-founded brand for first aid light for the entire family, is to look at a pre-launch, website wasn't even live yet, and it was a giveaway campaign. Enter to win a gift card to get away. It was brand aligned. It was with a fantastic group, and they had over 6,000 contacts sign up. So it was a way, and then once we moved and launched the site, we shut down everything on Facebook, moved it over to now CBD compliant publishers, which I'm excited to wrap up the evening with an offer. But in thinking then about, if you are a cannabis company, I'd love to see the Key Cocos teas represented in the Matteo video. That's phenomenal. Women-led brand in California. These teas are delicious. They're effective. But really looking to see how do we connect with a new audience for them. And so the edibles community, that you'll see throughout your farm-to-table restaurants and grocers, is a cannabis advertiser that is open to the edible category. And so where there's a will, there's a way to get to market, and there's a lot of publishers who are very excited to be on the right side of history. And one of them is Pinterest. And so, for example, things are moving every single day in this space. And so in thinking about how you go to market, you have to stay curious, you have to stay open, you have to continue to make the business case for why these brands are incredible. And these publishers will move either because the consumers are demanding them to move, or because they want to be on the right side of history and make money, quite frankly, from this and be a revenue generator. And so if you're curious about advertising on Pinterest as a CBD brand, I'd be happy to talk to you later. And yes, we have come a very long way. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to join this incredible panel. Ask me anything about advertising and marketing. I'm here for you. So thank you.
So the other thing that's cool about this space is that it's very inclusive. I messed up. I was supposed to have them all introduce themselves in the beginning. So Amy, you were covered beautifully. And I would like to go down the row and have everyone introduce themselves because I got so excited I forgot.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Tuttle, and I'm a business development manager for Spring Big with a focus in emerging markets, Connecticut included. We are a cannabis-specific text marketing, email marketing, marketing in general, CRM platform with also the ability to build custom native apps for retailers. We've been around since 2017. It's going very well thus far. And myself, my journey into cannabis is both very personal as well as, a direct path professionally. 4 years ago, I was working for a medical device technology company completely on the other side of the space. I got a spontaneous opportunity to move into the hemp world, which I jumped at, and I got very plugged into the farming network in Vermont, which was an incredible experience to really be plugged in with the people who are physically growing the product that so defines the industry. During that time, I was started to deal with a chronic condition. I was taking a heavy-duty pharmaceutical every single day, and through my professional space, I got educated on how I could maybe help myself in a more natural way. So now, no longer need to take anything and exclusively use cannabis for that, and I'm so very grateful to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Rock on, Renee.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
I'm Renee Katzis. I'm the Senior Vice President of Media Strategy at Matteo Communications. We are a full-service marketing and communications firm based in New York City, specializing in cannabis and lifestyle clients all over the country. I don't have as beautiful of a story as Emily does, but I am a longtime cannabis user. I'm super passionate about the plant. Before I was working at Matteo, I was doing PR and music, and then got into cannabis PR, and I feel very lucky to be able to work in an industry that I'm super passionate about.
Sherry.
Good evening. I have a rather full background. I started as an actress and a model. That was a very long time ago. As a matter of fact, the picture in the lobby with the brown hair was 2005. It's time for a new picture, I think. From there, I went to law school, and among other things I did in law, I was a federal prosecutor, and I put away and took away property and people. People went to jail, and property was taken by the federal government through a process called asset forfeiture, which was really very interesting because you could take property without due process of law if it was involved in drugs, and you could trace the property's acquisition to the drugs. In other words, if you got money from selling drugs and you bought a house, the federal government could take it away. So how does somebody like that get into cannabis? Well, from there, I bought a couple of companies, 8 to be exact, from various large corporations that we call them corporate orphans, and spent 20 years as a C-suite executive and decided to retire for a while. And 2014, I founded a consulting company. I was bored, and someone came to me, a woman, and said, "Can you raise some money for my daughter? She has a great landscaping business." And that landscaping business was a desire to have a winning application for cannabis. And in fact, that's how I found my way into the industry. I helped this woman. I wrote the application in 3 weeks. She was one of 15 in 2015 to win this license, which made her $100 million. And I thought, there's a lot of money in this business. And then I learned more. I learned that as a federal prosecutor, and I learned that all of these folks that I was taking stuff from and putting stuff away were really being victimized. And that drugs, cannabis, any kind of drugs, should not be treated in a penal fashion. And cannabis in particular has been a wonderful remedy for so many people's chronic pain. And that is something that I want to see today. And so I founded the Council for Federal Cannabis Regulation for the purpose of moving cannabis ahead federally and for educating people such as you and the federal government and me, because I learn every single day. And would you know that all cannabinoids except for THC are legal today? But you can't buy any of them that federally legally, because they're all sitting on the shelf, and the FDA says that these cannabinoids that have been made legal can't be put in products, can't be put in tinctures, can't be digested, can't be rubbed on your skin. So what exactly can they do? And so we, the Council of Federal Cannabis Regulation, are here to move this federal government educated to the fact that this is medicine and this is also safer than alcohol. And that's what I do today, and I don't know how it happened.
Thank you, Sherry. And Sherry flew up just for this night from DC for us. And with that, the commissioner, please.
I'm Michelle Siegel. I'm the commissioner at Connecticut's Department of Consumer Protection. And so we regulate, currently there is an active medical marijuana market in the state of Connecticut. Just passed. Recently, the legislature passed a law for adult use market, and so we are in the process of rolling that out. I'll probably, as the regulator, be the wet blanket in this thing, so I do have to caution everybody. Be sure, as you think about your marketing and advertising, every state has some different rules around that. You know, our focus is on the businesses that we license. Connecticut has pretty strict rules for people who are not even licensed to do these supplemental things. So, you know, take a look at every state you're entering into, see what their laws are. You know, we're still working on what our rules are going to be for the adult use market, but we certainly, you know, some of the things we have concerns with is not targeting an audience that's under 21. We don't want advertising that's going to, you know, really be reaching that younger audience. And also we have concerns as we think about what packaging and other things should look like, that it isn't confusing with non-cannabis products, again, because we worry about it getting into the wrong hands and or being attractive to people who are not yet old enough to use it. But with that, I will hand it over.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm Jacqueline Bennett. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Highlands Venture Partners. I'm the Chief Growth Officer of Commons and also on the advisory board for the Last Prisoner Project. And there's a theme across each of those roles that is about contributing to opportunity, creating opportunity, unlocking opportunity for those who deserve it, first and foremost, in the cannabis industry, but also being a part of something that is truly exciting as this emerging category to provide access to an incredibly important plant for the population in general. So my journey to get here, and the woman 2 doors down has been, she was one of the first people I met in the industry, and I think I came from a background, you may detect I have an accent from Australia, so my journey has been both geographical and professional. I think coming from a world of I've been on Wall Street, I've been in Silicon Valley, I've been on local community boards. I've kind of done that battle of heart, head, with this insatiable desire to be a part of something impactful and meaningful. And I didn't realize it at the time when I was entering this industry, but this is an incredibly important mission that we're all on. And I have fallen into a combination of finding ways to make this accessible again to everyone, whether it be financial, whether it be access to the product, whether it be employment, whether it just be education. So we'll talk more about this over the course of the evening, but thank you for coming. Thank you for your curiosity. You're in the right place, and we need everyone on board because we're not doing anything but good. And we need to ensure that the good is democratized as well. I'm just really going to call out my colleague out here, Meredith, who's just joined Commons, who's been a really meaningful addition to our team. And I think what we'll get out of this evening is a lot of great education from a commercial perspective, but also a why we're here. And I think really listen out for that latter one.
That sounds great. I mean, You know, even just the intros ate into some time, but really painted a picture for all of us about how incredibly perplexed and deep and passionate we all are about what we're doing. This isn't just a day job that we check in and out of. With that, I put my readers on, and I want to start with the commissioner. I want to start local. So many questions, but I want to make it relevant to both people who are here as well as people viewing elsewhere from the U.S. Because as a medical cannabis consumer, I was simply amazed by my experience at Blue Point Wellness here in Westport. Can you, before we get into everything else, can you briefly tell us about that pharmacist-led program now in effect since 2012?
Yeah. So we're really proud of the medical program that we've developed here. And when the law passed, and it's been, about 10 years now, there was still a lot of hesitancy about marijuana, or cannabis, as we call it now. But and so in launching the medical program, we really, the law and our mission was really to be true to treating this as a medical product. And so the reason it's with us at Consumer Protection, which I don't think a lot of states have it there, is because we regulate the pharmaceutical marketplace. We have a drug control division. They regulate drug manufacturers and they regulate pharmacies. And so we really looked to that model when we set up Connecticut's medical program, because we felt like patients deserved the same experience in getting their medical marijuana as they got getting other medical products. And the pharmacist relationship between sort of the physician, a pharmacist, and a patient, we thought was really important to preserve that. Especially you don't get a prescription in the traditional sense, because obviously the federal law is a little different. But we did reschedule cannabis, so it's a Controlled 2 schedule within Connecticut, obviously not federally. But we did that, and we wanted the pharmacist in that relationship. They know how to talk to people about dosage. They know how to talk to people about drug interactions. And so that was keeping the pharmacist in the relationship was an important part of our program there.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so let's get to the question most of us in this room want to hear about. 2021 legalized adult use cannabis in Connecticut, and it's being rolled out in several phases. May 4th marked the deadline for retail license applications. How many apps did you receive? What's ahead for retail? Will there still be medical dispensaries? Answer some of those questions.
All right, so yeah, a lot going on there. One, there will be a medical program, and we thought it was really important as we, worked with legislators in designing the law to make sure that the medical program still had a place in Connecticut. And so there's a number of ways for people to get a license. So one is the medical businesses can convert, but they would need to apply. Part of that would be to have a plan in place to preserve the medical market and protect patients. But in terms, the kind of primary pathway for others to get into the retail market is through, we've set up a lottery process. And so, as you said, the application period just ended, and we got thousands of applicants. And so we have 2 lotteries that are running. One is for social equity applicants, and it's really, the social equity piece is really important in Connecticut. It's woven into the law in a lot of different areas, one of which is that 50% of each of these kind of rounds of new licenses should go to social equity applicants. So we had, I believe, over 8,000 applications into that social equity lottery. So we will pull from there, and then there was created a social equity council. And so it involves a number of appointees. I have a deputy commissioner who's sort of DCP's designee on that council, but there's 14 other members from legislative leaders through the governor's office, some other parts of government, such as DECD, the Department of Economic Community Development, because access to capital and that is an important piece of it. And so they will vet first the social equity applicants and make sure they are legitimately kind of meet that criteria, so that we don't, so that we can stay true to the design of the law. And then once we have a set of social equity applicants, a general lottery will be run so that we maintain that 50-50 balance.
Great. And then just a quick question. I just have to ask. when does the first retail dispensary open? So far, the media is saying end of 2022. Do you see any hurdles that would postpone that? Are you allowed to comment on this?
No, I mean, that's sort of what we've been aiming for. There's important work. The Social Equity Council was created in this law. They have an important role to play in vetting license applications. And so, with the lottery rounds just ending and that process just starting, I don't want to unduly kind of put deadlines on the important work they need to do. So I still think that's a realistic date, but we can't give precision there, but I do think it'll be, later this year, maybe into early 2023.
Thank you. All right, so now let's push out at a national level to talk about hemp and cannabis. Sherry, given the CannaCurious professionals who filled seats and plugged in tonight, can you talk to us about the implications of just running a business in cannabis? While we've covered that cannabis already has its merits medically as well as adult use, I wanted to use the metaphor of alcohol to help frame this for this audience. Because as a comparable, we all know that the law for alcohol changes in state by state in terms of sales, taxes, operating hours. So what makes cannabis harder fundamentally because it's federally illegal?
So yes, cannabis is harder than alcohol. Probably better for you. The federal government, through the Tax and Trade Bureau, taxes alcohol and set out a regulatory scheme, which is enforced by the states. And as I think many of you know, we have dry states and we have hours, as Erica has said, which are set by the state. And you have something very similar in the cannabis industry. You can't buy cannabis everywhere. Well, that's another question, but theoretically under this framework, you can't buy cannabis except from a state-sanctioned store, and that state-sanctioned store has paid the state for a license, and it's called a dispensary. Now, when you go to get a dispensary, the license fees can be low or high. I've heard as low as $1,000 and as high as $50,000. I'm going to give you a dispensary as an example of why cannabis is difficult. So you walk into your store and your inventory all has to be kept in a safe. Everything has to be kept in a safe. Then you hope that you can get inventory because you can only buy from your state. And the few cultivators in your state often run out or may play games with you. So being able to buy cannabis and being able to have your inventory is not particularly an easy thing. But more importantly, at the end of the day, when you get all your cash, those tens of thousands of dollars you've made, especially on a 420, do anyone here know what 420 is, or do you all know what 420 is? Okay.
Record sales this year.
Well, anyway, those are record sales, and you have all that cash, and guess what? You have nowhere to put it. One, a lot of dispensaries throughout the United States can't take credit cards or even debit cards. Some dispensaries can, some dispensaries can't, which means the consumer has to shop with cash, and then you have nowhere to put cash. So when the early days happened, you actually had people who were taking their cash and filling up warehouses with cash and filling up and digging ditches to hide their cash in the forest. This is not a regular business. And then the law changes every day.
Yeah.
So you think you're abiding by the law and you think everything is fine, and then the state regulators come in and you find out everything that you were told to do is no longer the law and they've changed things. And this happens with regularity. Now, remember, and I'm just talking to you about one type of cannabis business, which is dispensary. Then you cannot deduct the cost of goods sold. I don't know if you all know what that is, but it's what is the goods that you're selling. I buy it from the cultivator, and I have labor to put it away and put it in the safe and sell it, but I can't deduct my expenses because federally it's illegal. And when you pay your taxes, that's another fun thing. Lots of people go in with wheelbarrows or trucks. This really happened in the early days. Some people still pay in cash. Some people cannot get bank accounts. Lots of dispensaries can't take debit cards. So it's amazingly difficult for the seller of pot to be able to sell pot.
All right, so let's switch to the other one. There's a lot of confusion around CBD. It's the question I get most because consumers don't differentiate or understand the difference. I hopefully captured the essential distinctions between hemp CBD and cannabis CBD. Where do you think the FDA will land on regulation with hemp CBD? When and why?
So this is something that makes me crazy. Absolutely. Cannabis is cannabis, okay? There's no hemp in cannabis. It's cannabis. And you have low and high THC, which I call, low THC, low cannabis low THC, CTL. I forget what it is now. Anyway, so hemp does not have THC in it. Otherwise, what they used to call marijuana when they called hemp is exactly the same thing. And all of the compounds in hemp and marijuana are the same thing. One state that I know of came out and said you cannot get any cannabinoids from marijuana plants, but you can get them from hemp plants. So all of that nonsense is just what it is, nonsense. CBD is one molecule, and probably not the most stunning molecule in this plant, as Erica's chart told you. CBD is potentially a wellness drug, an anti-inflammatory. The government, I think, actually has one of the patents on it. It's an amazing molecule. Everybody sells it. The people who make it in the bathtub and the people that have the big MSOs, multi-state operators, that make it carefully. So you really have to be careful where you buy your CBD from. And by the way, the FDA says you can't buy CBD, it's federally illegal. However, the FDA's jurisdiction doesn't happen until things are shipped across state lines. That's when federal jurisdiction and federal law comes into play. That's why we have states that can control the cannabis market and the federal government. So the FDA is just come out today and said to the Congress, we haven't done very much to regulate CBD. It is still federally legal. It is not going to stay federally illegal. I personally expect that we will have guidelines out from the FDA by the end of this year. And the commissioner of the FDA has come out and said we need new pathways. And that I agree with, and I think a lot of people agree with, that you can't treat cannabis just like every other thing. And I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. So I'm going to move on from how and when we sow the seed to making the sale, branding and marketing. I loved Amy's example of what she did with Pinterest to create a special program to select and vet CBD brands. Let's dive a little deeper. I want to take this one to Renee. Given Mattio's PR lens from the earliest days of marketing, give us an idea of how far we've come. What's it like to build a brand today in cannabis? And what's improved over your early days? How far are we from a Super Bowl ad?
So when we first started, well, I should say when Rosie first started, who's our founder at Mattio, it was really just the cannabis trade outlets that would cover cannabis news and cannabis products, and maybe a couple of business outlets for the big stories. But that was pretty much your only option. Rosie ended up getting in 2017 the first pieces in Oprah and in Vogue about a cannabis product company, but that didn't happen overnight. That took basically from 2014 to 2017, so like 3 full years of consistent pitching and building relationships with these writers and reframing cannabis products as CPG products. So There are today a lot more opportunities in terms of PR and press coverage than there were back in the day. And I do think that PR is especially important for cannabis companies because of the ad restrictions. Yes, there are paid media opportunities, but it's not a free-for-all like it is for other industries. So there are paid media opportunities. We in fact just launched an agency that works in that area as well in mainstream media. But and there are opportunities in broadcast, but the FCC, which is a federal agency, monitors all broadcasts. So while we're still in a landscape of federal illegality, we're a long way from a straight up Super Bowl ad for weed. But that being said, this past Super Bowl, there was a Skechers ad featuring Willie Nelson. And it was an ad for sneakers, but he was wearing a shirt that said legalized in big bold letters, and he was playing off of the idea that he thought Skechers would be illegal because they're so good, right? Yeah. And so they were very obviously leaning on Willie Nelson's relationship to cannabis and his place in the industry. So while I do think we're a pretty far ways away from a legit Super Bowl ad, I do think we're going to start seeing more, innuendos and product placements and, little loopholes like that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I remember, didn't you guys do, the Oscars bags, did you get those stuffed? Yeah, so it's been, it's been picking up, and I mean, seeing Rolling Stone, it's normalized now. I mean, I'm seeing,
you would think. I mean, there's still a lot more opportunity nowadays, a lot more opportunities in mainstream media than there were. That being said, the big lifestyle outlets that everybody wants to be covered by are really only covering it once a year on 420, and they're not taking it as a serious, part of consumerism in general.
So, on the flip side of the boom, it has its challenges. Brands are evolving in a fragmented, crowded market. There are 100,000 unique product SKUs in California alone. Brands need to differentiate, build relationships with their audience, learn what's working, and iterate quickly. But with only 25% of consumers saying brand recognition drives repurchase, there's just not a lot of brand loyalty. As Renee mentioned, you're restricted in some of these ad channels, and Amy's working hard to open those up. Question to Emily. Can you paint a picture of why and how the role of technology is helping brands grow?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to speak to some of the challenges as well. I think one of the biggest challenges for a brand coming into a new market or an existing market is the fact that the regulations are different state to state. That has a huge impact on advertising. And one of the trends that we're seeing currently, especially in the emerging market states, those states that are just coming online with medical programs or just going rec, is that they'll activate a program and within 6 months, some kind of advertising regulation will change. And we saw this happen in the state of Missouri last year, where out of nowhere, all third-party advertising was banned. Blocked completely. And the person that it's really hurting at the end of the day is the medical consumer itself, because they don't have access to the educational information that they need to make a decision on a brand. So that's, I would say, one of the greatest challenges. The other challenge, I think, that is that brands think that they have to do this by themselves, that they're responsible fully for their own brand generation. What we need to do, and what we've also started to try to do with our technology at Spring Bake, is bridge the gap between retailers and brands, bring them together in order to facilitate brand loyalty and brand awareness. And I think that's a really important step to take, because the brands are their own best ambassadors when it comes to educating people on their products. And the retailers have direct access to the consumers. And when you bring those two groups together on a technology platform, that you then have data to bring back on a brand level to be able to further pursue loyalty direct to the consumer. So using technology in that way just to gain not only access for the brands to be directly put in touch with the consumers, which is a gap that we're overcoming through this particular part of the platform, but also to just drive the educational portion of it, and that in turn not only boosts sales for retailers and better strengthens the relationship that they have with their brands, but also educates the consumers at the end of the day as well.
Thank you. Well, so this race for scale means accelerating consolidation and brand consistency. And I just want to throw out another metaphor, I think of metaphors. Mickey D's fries taste the same wherever you buy them. So, Renee, talk to us about how consistency and distribution has its challenges.
Right. So when you're building a brand, the main thing you need is a consistent, reliable experience every time you try the product. And in cannabis, it's super hard to do that. So there's supply chain issues. So on the retail side, you might go to a dispensary and find some products you really like and try to go back there the next week and get those products, and they aren't there because of supply chain issues within that state. Happens all the time, regularly. Regulations are different from state to state. So like you said, Mickey D's fries taste the same in New York as they do in California. A Coca-Cola in Washington is the same as a Coca-Cola in Michigan, but due to regulations on packaging, dosing limits, stuff like that, if you try to buy a product in one state, you might not be able to get that same experience in another state. So that is really challenging to brands. I know you mentioned consolidation. There's a gajillion of everything out there right now, and consolidation is going to have to happen, but until we see who's going to come out on top, it's kind of hard to see what a real national cannabis brand could look like. And the other major issue I see challenge is pricing. We saw the graph about the illicit market. A lot of the reason why people are driven to the illicit market, or why people are not leaving the illicit market to come to the legal market, is because legal weed is expensive. If I can get an eighth from my plug for $40, why am I going to drive to this fancy dispensary and pay $80 for it, So even if you want to have a thriving cannabis brand, you're super passionate about it, and you have a great idea, there are a lot of roadblocks.
And so, in talking about sort of roadblocks and going state to state, I'd like to throw this one to the commissioner. Talk to us about state-by-state advertising on the borders. I'm thinking driving down the highway towards Massachusetts. I see some billboards. How are states working independently and collectively?
So that is a challenge, and certainly, it creates frustration because also, they're advertising, in competition with across state lines. A lot of that, we certainly talked to other states, and we work together on a lot of different issues. So we know a lot of states are struggling with how to handle that. In Connecticut, a lot of the advertising, particularly, when it's an out-of-state company, they're not licensed by us, but we work, with the Attorney General, and they kind of have to look at what Connecticut's law allows and work through a process to see which of these advertisements are going to be in compliance or not.
Great. And then I want to now take it back to the conscious consumer that we hear about. And I want to ask Renee, talk to us more about the consumer and how brands are truly embracing social equity. And, give us a sense of some of the things that brands are doing about it.
So the conscious consumer is something that is very much on the rise. People are doing much more research before they buy products to make sure that their money is going to a company that they trust and that they trust. A lot of people will just go into a dispensary and find the stuff that looks the coolest or they've heard about. But this conscious consumer is going to want to buy from Black-owned brands, women-owned brands, brands that they know are contributing to diversity and social equity issues within the cannabis industry and elsewhere. So we at Mattio, we work with a company called CannaCurious. They're a collective that really just focuses on improving diversity and social equity within the cannabis industry. They've created two really, really good resources. One is called the Accountability List. It's a basically a live Google document that businesses are able to go in and add their staffing data, their diversity data, compared to what they have promised publicly, to make sure that what they're doing is matching what they're saying. So you can at any point go on that list and check out like a company that you want to buy a product from and make sure that they're doing the work that they say that they're going to do. They also have this database called Inclusive Base, which is a database full of companies that are owned by people of color, women. They have tons of categories on there. So if you want to try a new product, but you're a conscious consumer and you want to make sure it's going to a company that is founded by a woman, you can go on there and look for it. Or if you're a cannabis company and you need, to partner with an ancillary business for some service, you can look on that database and find some companies to work with. But in terms of like social equity campaigns that have been really effective, we work with Tilt. They have partnered with the Shinnecock Nation, which is a indigenous community out on Long Island. They're actually a sovereign nation, so they aren't able to reap the benefits of like state social equity programs. So they partnered with Tilt to help them break down that barrier to entry, so that they could be involved in the industry too, which I thought was a really good example of one that actually made an impact. Another one I wanted to call out was the Curaleaf Rooted in Good campaign. They rolled this out a while ago. It was, a bunch of promises in terms of, staffing, diversity, and all of these, expungement clinics and different things that they were going to do. And they recently released a social impact report that goes through all of their progress and where they're at in terms of those promises. So I think that change to like being accountable for the things that you're saying in terms of social equity and diversity is really important, because this new cannabis, like this new conscious consumer, like wants receipts. They don't want to just hear you say it. They want to see the receipts of what you've actually done.
They want to see it authentic. I mean, when I was doing my homework on you, I loved the idea of that you all were also encouraging, like, rather than getting this celebrity, let's pull up the veteran. Let's pull up someone that we can have to speak for this brand where it's really making a dent in their life, and we're helping to shape and change the thinking associated around this person to elevate them. So I recently sat in on a webinar. It was last week. John Kagia, who's from New Frontier Data, he pondered a thought relative to consumer trends and stigma associated with cannabis. And he said, what would people think if cannabis were discovered today in the Amazon? So, Jacqueline, let's pretend prohibition never happened. Given your role on the Last Prisoners Project, how has cannabis prohibition fundamentally affected Black and brown communities? And then I want you to share about how you've built commons to actively contribute in a novel way.
I'll tell you exactly what he would have said if there was no prohibition. So I don't need to educate the room on the war on drugs and the way that demographics became chess pieces in yet another ideology that suited one demographic. So prohibition of marijuana, which I think everyone on this panel and hopefully more and more people in this room can start to realize is purely strategic and targeted towards putting in prison members of the Black and brown community for a completely different motivation. So what, in the lack of, without prohibition, I'm sure a different path would have been found, in all honesty. But it happened to be marijuana because that was the most obvious at the time. And what that has done is simply prevented the entire population from having access to a pretty incredible plant, and now a number of consumer products that have, and medical products that have real benefits to consumers. So the aftermath, I'd say the mild aftermath is the stigma. The major aftermath is obviously the injustices that have eventuated from a racial targeting perspective. So Commons is a brand that we started at the beginning of 2021, or really, but the idea came long before that. My founder and partner across Highlands and Commons, a woman named Tahira Ramatullah, who's been working in the cannabis industry for a number of years.
Yeah, she's a rock star.
She is a rock star. She definitely is. The recognition of how do we, I mean, the evolution of brands and how brands are speaking to consumers, and there's the obvious barriers of advertising, there's regulations, et cetera. When you start to see the benefit that the products have, I mean, the plants obviously have benefits for thousands of years, but I think there's this insatiable desire to accelerate access, and that's how I very much feel around the CBD, which is what we're starting with at Commons, and then expanding into other cannabinoids as the regulators allow. So what we're doing with Commons is it's a peer-to-peer model, and the reason why we went down that distribution path is because in the absence of being able to advertise through standard channels that every other category can, where we still have restrictions, how do you first of all reach the consumer, and secondly, how do you instill trust in this very murky moment where there's regulators are adopting consumers by surveys and statistics want access from a majority perspective across the nation, but there's still this dance that happens on the regulatory level. And you think about that translating into the physician side. You talked about the pharmaceutical world and some of that pharmaceutical boards being helpful in managing state regulations. When you're working with a product that has real medicinal benefits, real health and wellness benefits, and you have the network of physicians who can't actually, risking their license if they participate in the industry and are willing to recommend these restricted plant-based medicines. We found, firstly, by having a woman named Dr. June Chin join our company as our chief medical advisor, that validation, she's a woman who's been working in integrative cannabis medicine for 20 years. She was going through med school 20 years ago, had her own chronic condition. She was unable to perform her surgery prac because she either took opioids and was drowsy or was in too much pain to persevere that practice. So fortunately, her professor gave her CBD oil at the time and completely changed the path of her career. So she has been, again, working with integrative cannabis medicine for 20 years. And when she learned that we were building Commons, first of all, I'm pretty sure her first response was, thank God someone else can be a resource for trusted information and education, because you can imagine how much this woman is inundated given how few of her there are. For those in the room who don't know what a peer-to-peer model is, it is the old Avon model. It's going from person to person and sharing what you love and so on and so forth. And so in the absence of there being full legal or federal legalization, while science and I guess medicine is really catching up from a research and publicly available trusted education perspective, then the fastest way that we can accelerate access to the products and do it in a way where people can trust that information is through this peer-to-peer model. And it all makes sense. I mean, even going to marketing statistics, word of mouth, we sit around in our households. Amy and I were talking about this on the brief journey to Connecticut today. That's where, I mean, that's where we sort of share what we've discovered, share ideas, share products that make a difference to us. And what's so incredibly meaningful, motivating, impactful is that the testimonials that you hear when people have introduced CBD, we're using CBD right now, but I'm an advocate for all cannabinoids, it's so incredibly powerful, life-changing moments over and over and over again. And I'll give you a quick anecdote. We have these soft gels at Commons. They're 30 milligrams of full-spectrum CBD, and I take them on a daily basis. I've bought 72 bottles of our product to ship to Australia, which I would do at risk because you can't get it in Australia yet, because I'm so desperate for my parents and my brother and sister and their partners to start taking this daily because I know the benefit. So it's like, it's so obvious how beneficial these products are, this plant is, and the restrictions are just going to take time, but we have to arm together, and there is nothing harmful here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love, personally, I bought Commons for my mom for Mother's Day. And the other part of the model that I love when I heard her and to hear her speak was that, you know, not everybody can submit for a license, but we're in a gig economy, and why not, you know, reinvent the MLM model and give women some education from Dr. Chin and enable them to have businesses and make some extra money on the side. So with that, I feel like I want to end and ask everyone a question. I've always felt this. Shackles can be liberating. It's where the brightest innovations come from. I read a report how investors are actually looking at innovations in cannabis with other applications in other sectors. Innovation can happen in cannabis at a greater pace because federal regulations haven't been established. Without all that red tape that comes with regulation, cannabis can move faster and be more nimble. So, end question for each of you, 30 seconds. What do you see happening next? You can answer open road, no speed limit optimism, or hazards and roadblocks ahead. Start with you, Amy.
Oh, I'm gonna go all the fun, get in here, like try. I had the honor of being a Clio judge in cannabis. When I started out in advertising, I was like, no way will there ever be a Clio award for cannabis. And yes, we're now in our third year of it. And I had the honor of judging. And you do see where creativity comes out of requirements. And so I am full steam ahead that and I will also caveat this, that if you are not fully obsessed with this plant, do anything else with your life. Like, full stop. Like, do anything else. But if you're obsessed with this plant, you're obsessed with the potential of it, then I do think that it's creativity all the way. And one that I will say as a brand that I think is incredible and that also typifies this is working with Crypto Cannabis Club. They're the first NFT-based cannabis brand in the world. So you buy NFTs with a cryptocurrency, you receive cannabis to your door in California. That is absolutely innovative and at the edge of all things consumer and also cannabis enabled with tech. And so I think that cannabis is one of its incredible characteristics is that with the right strain and with the right dosage can also bring about creativity. And so I am always full on creativity. We'll get there.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, just to echo that in a slightly different vein, I would say that one of the most interesting things about being in the technology side of the space from, even 4 years ago to today is seeing the innovation that's happened thus far. And, even some routes like Springbig has taken where we can now build a custom native app for retailers. That was a game changer. No one had done that quite yet. And we're launched on Google and Apple, and having that space to bridge across different demographics age-wise and, gamify the experience has been a hugely impactful thing. And piggybacking off of that, when we are moving down the path towards legalization and, just decriminalization being, the first couple steps, I think that's going to be able to open the door, to more innovation and more research and more money into the research and money into the education portions of this space, which I think is hugely important because, like we say, there are eons and eons of medical benefits that we haven't even discovered yet. And being able to really have a data-driven path, I think, is the way to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Renee.
I mean, if you wanted to start a sneakers brand, you would create a sneaker, launch it, and then put ads on social media, and then I would buy it, right? In cannabis, we are nowhere near that process. So I'm very optimistic, just given this can't be it. We have work to do, and so that is why I feel optimistic. But Rosie, our founder, reminded me of a conversation that she had with Mary Pryor, the founder of CannaCurious, that I thought was kind of interesting for this final thought. And she said, be careful what you wish for, because the second that cannabis companies are able to, advertise freely and put things on social media, et cetera, is the same time that Unilever and Procter & Gamble and all of the big CPG companies are going to be able to do that as well. Right now, we've kind of done it all organically, and it's kind of a level playing field. But, when that happens, I think it might make things different.
Sherry.
So I'm going to select hazard and roadblock ahead.
I knew you would. That's good. We need that.
But what you've just said about Unilever, Nestle's, they're in the cannabis industry. They're making product, Pepsi, Ocean Spray. Did you all know that? Because they keep it hidden. And they don't invest in the industry either. Kind of bad. But we will eventually have legal cannabis. I don't think it's going to be without a huge hiccup. And a lot of it depends on who is elected in '24 and the ideology of that person. I can speak to the governor of Florida, who will not allow cannabis, recreational or adult use cannabis. So, yeah, there's going to be people out there like Mothers Against Drunk Driving that say, well, wait a minute, how can you smoke pot and be on the road? And you know what? We can't measure impairment of marijuana. It might be a problem. Thank goodness people are working on how to measure someone in a car and see if they have cannabis. But right now, we can't. We can't even tell the difference between hemp and marijuana, hemp being the non-intoxicating or low THC cannabis and high THC cannabis. So, yeah, I think we've got 5 to 10 years of bumpy road ahead.
Commissioner.
So from the Connecticut perspective, our focus is we're opening up a whole new marketplace, and it's a 300-page bill, so there's a lot of thought went into how Connecticut's marketplace should work. We've been working really hard, so has the Social Equity Council, and so it'll be exciting to see over the next few months how that all plays out. We certainly expect to learn a lot and to make adjustments if we need, but in Connecticut it really will be the kind of opening of a marketplace.
Yay!
I'm simply going to say speed wobbles. That sums it up.
I wanted to chime in on something you brought up because, I probably sound like a contrarian saying this. I think the thing that's missing that we all need to be doing as marketers is, while we figure out what impairment is, while we figure out how to measure that, it's to play an active role in promoting responsible consumption. So I think programs like this need to happen so people understand what that means, for people to understand that. And I think as an industry, I think we need to do a better job of that. I want to close with something that just, cracked me up. My neighbor actually is here. And I get HelloFresh. We buy HelloFresh. And I was so excited that when I open up my HelloFresh box, I've kept this. It comes with all kinds of promos for the wine club and, I don't know, Harry's shaving, Shutterfly. And I get this postcard. I'm like, what the heck? It's 420 advertising. 420 advertising from BarkBox. So it's a dog food company that is marketing to me as a cannabis consumer, telling me that, hey, wait, hold on. With this HelloFresh exclusive, your dog can eat their greens and rip them too. So it is happening. It's little steps at a time, but it's an exciting time.
It's not weed for dogs.
Right, it's not weed for dogs, sorry. Yes,
like
it's a
toys.
little plush toy.
Yeah.
It's a plush toy. But I just wanted to share that. I know we are out of time. I don't know if, I know there are folks at home. I don't know if it's possible to be able to ask some of these panelists some questions from the folks that are here, if you would like. Yeah, we did go over, but I think it was worth it. Thank you. So, yes. So, are there any questions?
I do have one question from the online audience. Would someone, how would someone break into the industry in marketing, advertising, or graphic design roles? Any advice to someone trying to break into the industry?
Okay.
I would say, there's a lot of skills from tons of other industries that are transferable to the cannabis industry. I literally got my job at Matteo. I applied on Indeed. And, so the opportunities are out there. And if you have experience in marketing and advertising in any other industry, you can absolutely apply that to cannabis. You just have to be a little bit more creative. But the opportunities are out there and people are hiring for sure.
I would also recommend, and this is someone that we're working with now at Kazoo. If you have those skills, it is getting more competitive. There are actual training programs that you can take, so you can actually learn more about the plant. This is an industry where it's not like selling Charmin or, Scholl's insoles. You really need to understand the plant. And there are online programs out there, and I wish, if it weren't for my terrible memory, that I could rattle one off, but.
Shameless client plug, but Vanxed.com
There you go.
Yeah, an
Yes.
online collection of jobs in the cannabis industry. If you're looking to enter, they have temporary work as well as full-time positions all over the country. So check them out if you're looking to enter.
The other thing I wanted to say is the best place to go if you're a marketer in Connecticut is in industry events in Connecticut, because you have a lot of people in the industry.
Right.
And those are the people that you want to do marketing for.
I got my job in cannabis by volunteering for the New England Cannabis Convention 4 years ago. That's literally how I found it. So I would definitely say pay attention to echo that. Pay attention to your local community, the events that are going on, because they are going on.
And that's a great point, because we're all startups, so we all need volunteers to help us.
How do you get paid instead of being a volunteer?
Pardon?
But how do you get paid in the business instead of being a volunteer?
Well, I think that what Emily is mentioning is, you kind of need to get your foot in the door. If you've got the experience, it's just showing the enthusiasm and the passion. And there's certainly, like I mentioned, I believe they're online simple programs, and I could give you my card and send it to you. There are some incredible programs that teach you the basics so that you can come in not only with your background and your area of expertise, but a knowledge of the plant.
Exactly.
Thank you for all of your information. I'm Thayer Barkley, and I'm the founder of Try Nature 2, it's COO. And I am First Nation SCATCO. We are not federally recognized. What is the difference? Oh, you can't hear me? I have a big mouth. I'm First Nation SCATCO. We are not federally recognized, so I don't know if we would have the same problems as the Shinnecock, who are federally recognized. So one of the issues that we're having, we're from Connecticut. We are a Connecticut company since 2019. We started off in the CBD business, but we want to venture into cannabis now. And, you know, being the social equity end of the spectrum, it's kind of hard to get financing because, you know, you can't get financing, and we're trying to figure out how to get into the market. I think my brand is wonderful, and I think you will too. And I'm just trying to figure out what's the best avenue to take when I already have a brand.
Are you trying to raise money? Is that what you're trying to do?
More, probably. Yeah.
I can answer the question if you like.
Go ahead.
This is being at a place like this and meeting people is probably, so I'm happy to have a conversation with you after this panel.
She's also partner of Highland Venture Partners. I don't.
But it is very, it's challenging. It's definitely challenging, and it's like everything else. It's not what you know, it's who you know. So let's have a conversation. But this is very much how these things happen, particularly in this industry. It's a very small industry, and I think the relationship element is critical. So we'll have a conversation. I'll get you in the right place.
Thank you.
I have two questions. I don't know if this is on or not. Yes. The first is for Sherry. You were pretty confident that we would have some FDA guidance by the end of 2022, hopefully. Do you have any thoughts on what the kind of minimum, maximum range level they would have potentially as part of those guidance, and if you think they'll have a perspective on full spectrum versus broad spectrum versus it having to be THC, that would be great. And then just a general question for Renee, Amy, and Jacqueline. Because the industry is regulated state by state, have you had any success in doing national campaigns for your brands? And if so, how have you kind of gone past some of the restrictions from an advertising perspective?
Well, let me look into my crystal ball here. Today, and I said things happen daily, Robert Califf testified, and he fessed up that we still don't have CBD legally in any state federally. So I think the FDA is going to get on it. They put their principal deputy, who was the commissioner, Janet Woodcock, the head of their cannabis group. And there is a real need to get some of the bad stuff off the market. It's not fair to those that are producing quality product, and it's very costly. So I think all of those are coming to bear now, plus I think we have an administration that is not adverse to it. So those are the reasons why I am optimistic, and we will be in front of the FDA in a couple of months, sharing with them the way they did it in Europe, and suggesting that perhaps with regard to full and broad spectrum hemp, they could get started, and that they could get rid of the drug exclusion rule, which they have not come out and said that full and broad spectrum hemp are not precluded. And I think everybody thinks they're not precluded. So I think all of that will happen by the end of the year. And I will tell you that I am a very optimistic person as a rule. So I have a great belief in what we as an organization can do.
Yeah, when she's got a seat at the table at the FDA, I'm certain they'll take notes.
Yes, I'm going to bring Erica with me at the table setter.
Yeah, sure. As far as a national campaign goes, it's looking at your, first of all, your KPIs and your goals to make sure that it works. So, for example, a single state operator in Washington, who is a great infused beverage brand leader, Evergreen Herbal, they devised a campaign that was both specific to Washington but also national. And so there were two sets of goals. One, in Washington, we wanted to drive foot traffic to their retail locations. So the advertising campaigns were very much focused on that goal. But on a national level, they wanted to start to develop brand awareness because brands that are in mature states are hoping, some of them are hoping to be acquired. And this merger and acquisition that we were talking about and the consolidation, so they're starting to build national brand awareness. So the way that they created the second goal of the campaign for brand awareness is that they featured their infused products into recipes that were seasonal for mocktails of infused beverages that they then allowed, created a recipe book that was free to download. And so then we did a national campaign, and because the campaign was called Gin and Chronic, we're like, we have to do this with Mary Jane, which is Snoop Dogg's publication. And so we did a national campaign that drove awareness to the Gin and Chronic campaigns that were seasonal mocktails and infused cocktails with this product that you can only get in Washington, but was full inspo for anybody else that wanted to download this free ebook. And so from that, the brand had a national play. They also generated first-party data, which is something all brands need to be doing, which is the opt-in. You need your consumers' enthusiastic consent for their emails and also increasingly their text messages, which I'm going to turn it over to you for that. And so stay in touch with your consumers. So I think part of it is you need to stay in business, but where you are locally. But then if you start thinking nationally, what is the value that you're providing? And in this case, it was an inspo of seasonal cocktails.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, just on the consumer front, it's so very important that you are as close to the consumer as humanly possible as a brand, and gaining consent in a good way, obviously in a TCPA compliant way, for example, is the first step to doing that. And then pushing past that point, I mean, I don't know about you, but I am glued to my smartphone. It's my personal life, it's my professional life, it's on me all the time. And the statistics that we see at Spring Big are 99% of all text messages are answered in the first 3 minutes. And that kind of level of in-depth connection with a potential consumer is beyond important. And from that, again, we're able to see, sales trends, retail trends, customer demographic trends, and then with that data just push out to be better in our campaigns, nationally and on a state level.
And I'll just call out a brand that's their business model has done a really good job of getting them recognized on a national level. They're called Old Pal. They have this vibe of kind of campy, cheap weed that you share with your friends and community and stuff like that. And they also have a brand called Old Pal Provisions, where they sell tons of super cool merch. They partner with really awesome companies, and their merch is all over the place all the time. And I see it even not in the cannabis world. So people know Old Pal Provisions, and then that brings them to Old Pal, just in terms of national brand awareness.
That's great.
Erica, we have a question about.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Solar Steve. A quick question and just a comment. I wanted to give a great shout out. It's awesome to see this led by women and First Nations and people of color and everyone. I think it's not a coincidence that the plant is female. And I think it's the oldest plant cultivated by humanity. In this country, you're required by law actually to grow hemp and pay your taxes. So I think before the rebranding of cannabis, I'm an old head. I used to have dreadlocks, and Bob Marley called it the healing of the nations. So I think it's amazing to see all of the social justice and the equity and welcoming everyone, the physical healing and the community healing. So I guess my question pertains to, there's a great forum for the social justice and what people are doing. Are you aware of sustainability goals like the ESG? I work in the solar industry, and we've worked with lots of large cannabis growers, especially on the West Coast, to install solar panels to grow their medicine. So I think it's amazing to have an organic plan. It's better than pharmaceuticals, but if you're burning tons of coal and making asthma and carcinogens. So I guess I would love to know if there's sustainability councils I could get tied into. And if anyone here directly knows growers, love to chat with them about going solar.
I just want to make one comment on it. Just one of the reasons why I want federalization is that if you think about our country, there are certain areas, like up here in New England, that aren't naturally easily going to be able to grow cannabis. But there are other states where the climate is. And so right now, because it's on a state-by-state basis, we can't grow it freely in areas where it may be more sustainable.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a state by state, but the organization that I would direct you to is Regenibus. So Regenibus is the organization that just hosted the first event at the UN this month, and their sole purpose to be is to connect the hemp and cannabis industries to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so they're putting out leadership, they're putting out guidance, they're putting out best practices, and they're actively doing it on a global level. So Regenibus is who I would look to for that conversation.
Because I think at a deeper level, the plant, I mean, it's the only thing that'll grow in Chernobyl, and I think there's a lot of social and environmental healing that can come from this plant besides catching a buzz or relieving some pain or whatever.
Industrial hemp is a really important thing to do some research on, because there's a lot of environmental benefits from industrial hemp. As a replacement, a substitute to other materials. I think one other point that's really interesting to note, but really to Erica's point, the handcuffs a little bit of the industry is that if you think about just the cannabis, high THC cannabis plant versus hemp, CBD derived from the hemp plant is legal at the federal level. It takes a lot more energy to extract that CBD from the hemp plant because it's not as highly occurring. And so just little pieces like that. I think the industry itself will do what it can over time to incorporate and demand these sort of sustainability standards that we're expecting from sort of rest of world, but there are some limitations right now that are just purely regulatory driven. So, but I think for the most part, those who are in the industry have that dedication. It's just when will the doors open for us to be able to focus on that and be able to invest in that. But come join the fight.
Thanks. I like all the work everyone's doing. I'd love to connect with folks after, and I'll pass it to the left-hand side if everyone gets the reference.
Let me say one thing about this industry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I think I was getting the time that we needed to shut because I think we've gone past and way past, and I'm so appreciative of your time. I've always believed in a fine blend of imagination, common sense, and data. And this industry is full of imagination. It's in its nascency. We're scrapping a way to build up that data. And I mean, these amazing women and some of the work that's been happening is just, I'm so thrilled and honored to be a part of this. And I encourage anyone that's thinking about taking a step. I felt like I took decades of my life to ultimately sell shit people didn't need. And and being in this industry, it just feels good. And I can't be more appreciative of the AMA, Tammy, and Dan, who believed in this and took this through and came back despite the COVID quarantine, and were amazing, amazing friends to me to help us put this all together. So thank you, all of you. And thank